What is up, everyone? Welcome, Cancer Crew members and guests. We got our good friend Roger Rasmussen, author of Finding Fenbendazole, a smashing success of a book that's just taking the world by storm at the moment. Roger, how you doing, man?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Good.
Doing good?
We got Jen here in the chat.
Yeah, to those who are watching, the way that this will work is we'll talk with Roger a little bit, kind of have him tell his cancer story. To the extent that questions come up that you want to have answered as we're talking, put it in the chat. I guess a word of disclaimer for the former lawyer within me. Nothing that you will hear here should be construed as medical advice. None of us are doctors or medical professionals. And the second thing is, to the extent that you have very, very specific questions about a very specific type of cancer or drug interactions, Roger's actually very helpful in those things, but not on the fly. He developed an algorithm that he can take through to the extent that you give him some of the parameters, but it takes a little bit of time. And so we'll probably defer on some of those. Like, I have these very specific health issues that are exactly pertinent to me. How much fenbendazole should I take exactly and at what times?
So it'll be just like a general overview, and then we can get into the specific questions within Cancer Crew.
And there is some way in the chat, and again, this is kind of our first foray into using Riverside in this way. So our hope is we'll kind of talk, and Roger will kind of go over story and then the applicability of fenbendazole that should be applicable to kind of the general use cases. And then, we'll hopefully wrap that part up in the next 30 minutes. And then to the extent that any of you want to come on and ask Roger any questions or just tell your story, and then we'll kind of reserve the last 30 minutes for that. That's kind of my rough plan that I'm more than happy to alter. We have some questions that came up within the Cancer Crew community that we can kind of salt and pepper in to the extent that there's a little bit of lull. But again, this is y'all's time, Cancer Crew members. So feel free. Don't be bashful. Don't be shy about asking questions or, getting some clarity around some of the things that you've been thinking about, because we're doing this to hopefully help you in your cancer journey. So that's my beginning spiel.
So Roger, why don't you start with your story that we were just joking you're going to tell 300 more times, but it's so good every time you tell it. And so if anybody's new here, just give them a little update on your story, or not even update.
Happy to do that.
Original.
But let me just start out by saying this is my second technically, but now I have this image of myself staring back at me as I talk, and it's very strange. I'll try not to look at that because it's distracting, and my eyes might be wandering as I talk. I'll start out with to back up, when I was diagnosed in December of 2019. I had regular doctor's physical, and I had a high elevated PSA. At that time, it was high enough that they wanted to do a CT scan, which led to an MRI, which led to a biopsy. And when I got the biopsy results, it was right around Christmas time, 2019. And within a week of that time, I had a friend who was being treated for Parkinson's at this holistic doctor place. And he made an appointment, dragged me down to this doctor's office to hear about a sound wave therapy for cancer. I wasn't really inclined to do that. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. I kind of had just gotten the biopsy results and was waiting to hear what the doctor wanted to do to me. But while I was in the lobby of that office, there was a woman there, struck up a conversation with her, and she mentioned fenbendazole, Joe Tippin's dog dewormer for cancer. And of course I thought it was crazy, but my mind didn't let it go. And I came home that night and started looking into it. And then I ordered the stuff on Amazon. It took a few weeks to get it all in. I did the original 2020 Joe Tippin's protocol, where it was packages of the dog dewormer with pictures of a dog on it. It came in packets of 3, and the vitamin E, the curcumin, and the CBD oil. I started doing that, and I had, in the meantime, my surgery got scheduled for April of 2020. So by the time I had all my stuff arrive, I had probably maybe 2 months before my surgery was coming up. But about 6 weeks into that, I was curious because I knew my surgery was coming, and I asked the doctor if he would give me another PSA test because I wanted to know, I want to know, is it working? I was anxious, of course, as you might be, because anyway, so I did that, and my PSA had come down a little bit, and I thought, that's awesome. Now what am I going to do? Because surgery is just a few weeks away. And then COVID came, and my surgery got bounced out to the summer because at the time it wasn't considered an emergency. So that gave me plenty of time to keep trying the Joe Tippins protocol. I was happy about that. I think Raleigh joked with me previously about I'm one of the few people that was happy for COVID. And
Yeah.
I really only say grateful things about it for that reason. It was terrible in many other reasons, for many other reasons. So I continued doing it. And as my surgery appointment was coming up, I asked the doctor for another MRI, another PSA, because I was like, it's been 4 or 5 months. Let me see what's going on. He gave me that, and it had come down about 30% from where it started. And I thought, this is awesome. I want to look inside. I need an MRI. And I asked the doctor for that, and he told me no. He didn't need an MRI because it wouldn't help him with the surgery that was planned just a month away. So I went and got my own. And when I got the result, there's places you can go in town where you can just pay out of pocket for a few $100. You get a radiologist report. And I read that report and I thought, this is interesting, but I don't really know how to interpret it. This is my first time I'd ever really taken a stab at understanding them. But I have a stepbrother who's a radiologist. And so I sent it to him and I just said, hey, don't ask me why. Don't judge me. I'll tell you why, but don't judge me. Just tell me what it looks like. Is there an improvement from 7 months ago? And he said, yeah, the tumors have shrunk and they've broken down. And breaking down is an important measure, even though it sounds simple. What he means by that is cancer becomes kind of really dense, hard tissue, and the way they measure tumors, at least in prostate cancer, is they use what's called a diffusion ratio. So they measure the way fluid moves through the tissue. And if it moves through slower than normal tissue, that means something's holding it up, and that usually means cancer. And the degree to which it gets held up is measured, and they use that measurement to grade the tumor. So comparing the one from 7 or 8 months ago to the one I did in July, the diffusion had improved. It had broken down the tumors. The tissue was less dense. It was more normal, and it had improved. So he said, what you're doing is working. Good job. So with that in mind, I canceled my surgery and just told my surgeon that I wasn't emotionally ready to lose my prostate and that I would be in touch. And he accepted that.
Point, it's a fair concern.
I mean, it is potentially life-changing, and not everybody goes through that and comes out all messed up, but the odds are not in your favor. Mm. And so he accepted that. And a side note, I never heard from him again, but I canceled my surgery and I just stayed on it. And during the next nearly 2 years, I got a series of MRIs on my own. I started going up to my stepbrother's office in Boise and using his facility to get the MRIs, and then he would give me the read on it. And it was probably within a year, for the most part, the MRI stopped, the sizes of the tumors stopped shrinking. They had shrunk way down from their original size, and they just kind of sat there and got less and less dense. So having 7 MRIs in a 2-year period is definitely overkill. But I didn't know at the time, and I was just wanting to be really careful because I knew I was in my own experiment of one, and I was in no man's land, and I thought it made sense and I could afford it. So why not? And that brings me to, in 2022, my last MRI, the only thing that showed up on my last MRI were considered, based on the grading that I talked about a minute ago, considered undetermined. That's and cool. Yeah, and nothing has changed between then and till just before my finished writing the book, before I published it. I got another PSA test, and it actually went down a little bit from 2.5 years ago. And I stopped taking the protocol in 2022, and I was curious to know if that was going to cause the cancer to come back, if it was still hanging out, waiting for an opportunity. I didn't really know what was going to happen. I figured if it started to come back, I could get on it and knock it back down. But nothing changed. But since we started talking recently, I've just gotten back on the protocol just to be, my experiment of one is over, and I'm going to be smart about it.
Well, it seems like somebody that you helped with a protocol that completely, like his tumors completely vanished from prostate cancer. It seems like he just continued to take it for 3 years and has taken it and doesn't really plan on getting off of it. Is that right?
He had actually colon cancer. His story is really interesting. It's a college friend. And I lost track of him since college, till three and a half years ago, an ex-girlfriend of mine happened to be talking to him somehow, and he mentioned taking Fenbendazole, dog dewormer, for his cancer that he had overcome. And she said, you need to talk to this friend of mine, me. And so she gave me his number and said, you should call him, because she knew I was writing a book. I started writing this book 4 years ago and got derailed. But anyway, so I got on the phone with him and we're talking and he's telling me about his story. And then we realized we were college friends.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, his story is interesting. So been over 3 years now. He had colon cancer and it had metastasized to his liver, and I don't know if it was anywhere else, but he had 19 tumors in his liver, and they told him he needed a liver transplant. He had to have surgery. He did some chemo, but early on in the process, he learned about Joe Tippen's protocol from a friend of his. So he got on it. And in addition to doing the basic protocol, he also added a bunch of other supplements that are more for gut health and liver health and things like that. Even like a shot of not mistletoe, but something like that every 6 months in stomach. Yeah, it's just crazy stuff. I mean, to me, it sounds crazy. Of course, it all is crazy, but it worked. It all sounds crazy. I mean, to think that kind of stuff can actually cure, I'm not sure the cure is the right word, but knock cancer back is amazing. Anyway, so he did that for about 9 months and went back in. They were telling him he was going to need to have that liver transplant done, and when he went in, the tumors were gone from his liver. So they canceled that, and he got an all clear about not quite 3 years ago, and he goes in every 6 months for a checkup, and every checkup has been clear.
And he's still on it, or he stopped, you know?
He's still on it. And we had this conversation recently because I told him, like, I stopped it for the reasons I told you, and I was also wondering, like, what are the long-term effects of taking Fenbendazole every day? Like, we don't know. We know that it doesn't just go right to cancer and do its thing. It's in your body and it does its thing. We know that normal cells have backup systems so they can, overcome it to a large degree, but we still really don't know because no one's done the research. But he told me, I know where I was headed when I had cancer, and I know the long-term effect of cancer, and I feel fine. And I take it every morning and every night with my other supplements. By the way, he doesn't do Ivermectin. And he says, I don't care about the unknown. I'm happy living the unknown. I'd rather be here with that than the long-term effect of cancer, which we all know where that ends up. So I think he has a point.
Yeah.
It sounds risky, and it probably is to some degree, but I mean, it's a personal choice. And who knows, maybe one day we'll find out that there is no long-term effect. It'll be part of all of our diets. Who knows? I mean, that sounds crazy, and it probably is. But considering the alternative, I think he's doing the right thing.
Did they ever give you a formal stage diagnosis, like in 2019? Did they ever, or it's just a PSA level and that's all you know?
It hadn't gotten out, so I don't know if that's stage 3 or stage 2. I don't know. But I did not have metastatic prostate cancer. It was all contained in the prostate.
Got it.
Okay, so we have a question from Sean. He said, Roger, I messaged you when I joined a little over a week ago. Same issue, advanced prostate cancer that has spread again. So this is the third time dealing with this since 2015. Anywho, how much Fenben do you take? Milligrams do you take with Ivermectin? How long did you take it? What was your diet? Did you change anything? We can start there.
Okay. Let me back up to what I did, and then I'll tell you what my brother did, because his story is similar but different. When I started, Joe Tippens was saying to take one packet of the dog medicine per week. So inside the dog medicine, there's 3 little pouches, and each pouch has anywhere from 222 to 444 to 888 milligrams of Fenbendazole. When I first read about Joe Tippens, I didn't catch that there was a difference. So I went to Amazon. I saw there was a 10-pound, which is the 222, the 20-pound, which is a 444, and the 40-pound dog, which is the 888 milligrams of Fenbendazole in each pouch. And I just thought, I'm bigger than a 40-pound dog, so I got that. I didn't realize at the time that they were saying to take the 10-pound dog version. So I did the 40-pound dog version 3 days a week for a year and a half. That's 4 times as much as what Joe Tippens recommends. He recommends the 10-pound dog version. But now he's saying 6 to 7 days a week because it's tolerated, so it's low risk, and et cetera. So that's one scenario. My brother got prostate cancer about about a year ago. He had similar diagnosis to me. When he got confirmation that he had 3 tumors, he got on the protocol. I told him what to do, but he didn't do what I told him to do. He just did one. I told him to do one 222 milligram FenbenBio in the morning and one at night. And maybe pause here and just talk about FenbenBio for a second.
Yeah.
I heard about that from my college friend. I didn't know it existed, but he told me about it, told me why he thought it was useful and that he'd been taking it. And I thought, well, that's a pretty good testimonial. I don't know anything about the company, but they claim to have modified the regular fenbendazole with some kind of addition that makes it get into your bloodstream better. You know how we're supposed to take it with food and fat? They've done something, apparently, they claim, to make that better without having the food or fat addition.
And
I
so,
would still
Sean,
take it with food
and
or
just
fat.
to pause, in just to double click even further, FenbenBio is a product SKU of fenbendazole at the Happy Healing Store, right? HappyHealingStore.com. You can go
thehappyhealingstore.com.
thehappyhealingstore.com. FenbenBio is the product name of the fenbendazole that they claim that they have made more bioavailable with some other additive that they've put into the Fenben to have your body absorb it more than normal fenbendazole. So for Sean, that was the brand that your brother started taking at the Happy Healing Store, unaffiliated. We make no money wherever you get the fenbendazole, but just as you're listening, and I know people get so stressed out about where do I get it, and when you're talking about FenbenBio, that's the place that he's talking about.
That's correct. Thanks for clarifying that. And I think it's also important to note that whether or not their claims are true, my friend swears by it, still takes it, and it works for him. And then I had my brother get on it. So now let me finish that story. I told him to take 1 in the morning, 222 in the morning, 222 at night. And at the time, I wasn't as bought into ivermectin as I am now. So I didn't tell him about ivermectin, but I told him CBD oil, curcumin, vitamin E, and he did all that, and food. So all that he did, and he used the FenbenBio. So he didn't do it morning and night. He just did one. And less than 3 months later, he went back in for another MRI, and that MRI showed that the tumors were gone, which was amazing. Like I don't know what to say. The difference between him and I, besides obviously we're not clones, we are brothers, but the difference is he did it 6 or 7 days a week instead of 3 days on and 4 days off. So
Interesting.
and he did the FenbenBio. So there may be a significant advantage just from the bio. There's obviously, in my opinion, an advantage to go every day. And I think he could have done more, but he obviously, in this case, didn't need it. So that's the uncertainty with the whole thing. The actual dosage thing is everybody just kind of winging it. I think we talked about this in the podcast. Why did they come up with 3 days on, 4 days off? Well, I think my theory is that the original dog medicine packages came in pouches of 3. So you would do 1 pouch 3 days in a row, and then that box was gone, and next week you get another box and do 3 more days in a row. I really don't know that that's the case, but it lines up.
I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. It is brought to you by Fierce Health. It's a company that Raleigh and I have been involved with for many years and is where we get the pill form of ivermectin. We are lucky enough to be associated with a medical team that will send out a prescription for pill form of ivermectin if the horse paste is something that you don't want to do. We totally understand that. And we also offer microdosing of GLP-1s, which has been super helpful for me to stay eating healthy and making sure that I'm having anti-inflammatory properties. So if that is interesting to you, go to fiercehealth.com and enter the code podcast to receive 10% off of your order.
And we kind of speculated on the podcast as well that, you know, like if your cancer were to come back, you would likely start with giving the cancer fewer days off of a fenbendazole diet as you could, right? To not have as much of a gap and do it more consistently than the three on, 4 off likely.
Exactly. Let's dive into that for a second. Here's what's going on. When this stuff is in your system, the way that it works is the fenbendazole interferes with microtubule dynamics, glucose uptake, and a few other things. But the key thing with microtubule dynamics is that's when your cells are dividing and growing. And that happens continuously. Now, every cell's on its own schedule, but if you don't have it always around when that cell's going to do its thing, whatever day of the week that is, then it has a chance to do its thing without interruption. Right. So from that standpoint, having it available at all times it makes sense. Right. So that's the logic behind doing it every day. The question is, do you need to give your body a break? Does your liver need a break? Are you compromised in other ways? Is it too much for you to handle? And that's when I suggest like getting those liver panels, especially if you're concerned. It's always a good idea anyway, but even more so if you're compromised in some way, to keep an eye on those, to make sure your body can handle it, because you are putting a medicine in your bloodstream that's got to go through the liver.
Did you make any dietary changes?
I am ashamed to say that I did not, because
That actually gave me a lot of comfort when I talked to you, because I had paid like thousands of dollars to talk to a naturopath, and she was like, I had to like cut up my hair and like send it in, and the like crazy testing, right? And she's like, okay, you need to change all your water, and you can't eat this and this, and like, and I like started to have a panic attack, because I'm like, there's no way that I can actually execute this. And so it actually made me feel so much better. I'm like, wait, I can be a normal person and like just try my best, and like it'll be okay, instead of being so hyper vigilant about every single little thing that is just a lot.
Let's delve into that for just a second, because I don't want to minimize the benefit of diet and exercise and a healthy lifestyle. And in some cases, it might be the key to, the key to overcome cancer. I mean, there are books out. Jane McClellan has a book called How to Starve Cancer, which I got early on in the process, and I was dreading having to implement it because I didn't want to diet. But in that book, she's got strategies for all these different, I know, laugh, but I don't want to minimize the possibility of that being the final thing that makes the difference for some people, And in that book, she talks about various cancers, and each cancer has a different metabolic strategy. And she actually creates diet plans for different cancers. And I think it's worth considering, especially if these aren't enough to get you over the hump, then you go wider with different plans of attack. Not that one didn't work, so try another. I would say combine them all if you're really trying to overcome something that isn't, and it's not working yet. It's just another bullet in your gun. In fact, she actually makes that point in her book. She's very clear about, like, this is not supposed to be the only thing you do. Complement it with whether you're doing chemo, radiation, surgery, or some other thing. This is another tool in your belt. And it's dumb to think, the cancer industry is foolish to think that there should only be one approach to taking on cancer.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that Sean said. They had me on hormones for a month, and Sean's the one who has the prostate cancer as well. They have me on hormones for a month now, and when I start this protocol, I wonder what the true results will be. I assume the Fenben and Iver, maybe he didn't finish the message, but so I guess he's on hormones, and he's thinking about starting this protocol. I think he had a bunch of questions in there. But
is that who is that asking that question?
That's Sean, who has the advanced prostate cancer at the moment.
So in some situations, the cancers can actually feed off the hormones, and that's why they use hormones to knock them back. But even if it is a hormone-dependent cancer or a hormone-resistant cancer, both of them require microtubule dynamics to divide and grow. So fenbendazole can play a role in either scenario.
Yeah. Cool. And how long? Another question that we get a fair amount is kind of how long is enough time to know whether fenbendazole is interacting well? Like, what's a fair time window, would you say, to know whether you've given it a fair shot or not? And maybe in tandem with that, what would be other potential side effects, the most common that you should be aware of while starting or upping the dosage or whatever, but kind of window to kind of see if the bet is going well or not?
I can answer that two different ways. From personal experience and that of my brother, a few months. From the research I've done and the framework that I created and using those tools, up to 6 months. So an educated guess would be on the low side, maybe 2 months. You might actually see some improvement sooner than that, but I wouldn't count on it too quickly. And maybe as long as 6 months. It's not something I don't think you need to sit and continue doing it if 6 months go by and nothing's happening. I wouldn't say give up. You never know. But that's just an educated guess, 2 to 6 months for the most part. Right. Like there's a bell curve, and most of the results are going to be in that window. There could be some outliers that may take a year.
Right.
Yeah. I'm curious, if somebody's just doing Fenben, like not FenbenBio, and they don't take it with the the supplements to make it more bioavailable, what's the likelihood that it works? So, I was talking to somebody and she's like, I've been on Fenbendazole and ooh, yay. And oh, I thought you were grabbing something. I'm like, oh, he's gonna
Oh,
show
it's
me.
the window. I was getting these
Window.
lights on.
Well, so she was like, I've been taking Fenbendazole, and I'm like, well, how much are you taking and what are you taking it with? And she's like, oh, I just take a little bit in the morning, like, it was just very like bare minimum, and like she didn't really understand the bioavailability piece, and it didn't work, like, but she had tried it for I think a month, and she wasn't doing it with any bioavailability supplements and stuff like that. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's hard to say. I mean, if you don't do it correctly, fenbendazole is water soluble, so it doesn't easily get into your system, and that's why it rides along well with fat. So if you're doing regular fenbendazole and you're just throwing it back with a glass of water, I mean, everybody's different. There's probably some people that it'll just come in because they're lucky. But for the most part, it doesn't easily get into your system without something to carry it in.
Which is why the supplements are so important as well, and the fat, and every time you take it.
Yes. The supplements, I think, come into play more so once it gets into your bloodstream, then they help facilitate the mechanisms that it's using against cancer. But to get it there, you need it to ride along with fat or some other kind of special thing that FenbenBio seems to have created.
I think we've talked about this before, but I know you mentioned the CBD tincture, the curcumin, and the vitamin E. What are those? What is that? Just one pill of vitamin E a day? Like, you want to go over kind of what your dosage was of those three alternatives? And then to the extent that anyone in the audience is wanting to come on, I think that there's a button somewhere that you can press to come on at some point. I don't know how, but y'all are smarter than me, so I'm sure there's some way. And so to the extent that any of y'all want to come on and ask Roger a question, we're more than happy to facilitate that. Otherwise, we'll just keep kind of peppering the questions that we have from the cancer crew. But we'd love to prioritize the people that are here live and get whatever questions they have answered. But you want to go over the CBD and the curcumin and the vitamin E?
Yeah, so when I did it, I went on to Amazon, thankful for Amazon, and I looked around at all the options, and my first mistake was buying hemp oil. I didn't know that hemp oil wasn't the same thing as CBD oil. So for the first 6 or 7 months, that's what I used. But it seemed to have worked. My recommendation would be to just look for something that has good reviews and it's probably more expensive than the cheap stuff. I would definitely want to recommend staying away from the cheap stuff. Now, I'm not saying cheap stuff isn't just as good, but I don't know enough. I just know the general rule of thumb is you tend to get what you pay for. So with CBD, I remember paying about 30 or 40 bucks. At one point, I started buying a capsule form because I just got sick of putting it in my mouth because it tastes so yucky. It's like putting grass in your mouth. It was just gross. I don't mean grass, the weed kind that you smoke. I mean grass from the lawn. It just kind of
not the cool kind,
the cool kind, but the actual kind. CBD, so ironically, Raleigh and I were going to dinner with somebody that wanted to buy one of our companies, and they had a whole CBD business. And I had just talked to you, and I was like, oh my gosh, I actually need to buy CBD oil. And I gave her Joe Tippins, and I told her the whole thing, and she sent me something from her company, but she said it was CBG oil. Do you know if that's? Do you know the difference? Okay. Well, she's like, no. I think this will be good. But now I'm like stressed. I'm like, wait, what if CBG is not right? And it's just CBD. But hers tastes like cinnamon and it's super good. And I actually enjoy it. So hopefully it's working.
And I will say one of the things that I love about you, Roger, is that is atypical in this kind of alternate cancer healing realm is when you don't know something, you just say that you don't know and you don't pretend to know the answers that you don't know. So not knowing is okay, and that's, I always appreciate your intellectual honesty on the process.
Appreciate it that you're okay when I don't know.
I prefer it.
That's how we know you're authentic.
I want to continue on that line of thought for a second, though, because about the CBD is one thing, and I'll say something about the big picture in a second. But the other thing about that is with respect to vitamin E, there's a lot of different vitamin E's out there. And my recommendation would be make sure you get one that has a wide range of what they call tocopherols, and they're generally dark in color. So if you're buying vitamin E from and I did this for decades. I've been taking vitamin E since I was in college just because I just was. And I was buying the cheap stuff because I didn't really know if there was a difference, but now I do. And the thing that you want are the darker color vitamin E's with the wide range of tocopherols. So when you're buying vitamin E, again, you don't want to buy the cheap stuff and look for the ones that have high tocopherols. Those are the key ingredients that actually help make these mechanisms work.
Where do you
And
get
the last
yours?
thing
Where do you get your vitamin E? Just on Amazon?
on Amazon.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to force you, everyone in Cancer Crew, I'm going to force Roger to just give me the links to the specific ones that he uses. You're going to text it. We'll make a little Cancer Crew guide of Roger's recommends is what we're going to call it.
It's so good.
And Roger recommends.
Roger recommends.
And we'll get them.
But remember, I'm the same guy who got the 40-pound dog and the oil. So what I mean,
that was before you did the research.
We'll put big asterisks around it. Not medical advice. Remember, that's like I got a C in biology. Remember, Roger bought 40-pound dog stuff. So take it with a grain of salt. We get all that. But.
The last thing I want to mention is regarding the curcumin. Again, look for the higher quality one, generally more expensive. It says bioavailable. That's usually a good sign. But the big picture here is, with respect to this, all these things working together, I think the lesson learned, at least from my experience, is it's not set in stone. I think the key ingredients are the Fenbendazole and now the Ivermectin. The other ones help make it better, but it doesn't, if you get one of them wrong, be doing the other stuff. Just try to be as consistent and get the good stuff, and that's as good as you can get.
Cool. Yeah, I agree.
If anyone wants to come on, which I'm not seeing any takers at the moment, so we'll go to some of the questions. Best place to source quality Fenben. We kind of talked about the Happy Healing Store. Any other kind of secondary place outside of FenbenBio that, I guess, because you were using Panicure basically, and so if you were to get it, if you were to get it again, you would go to the Happy Healing Store, and then if that's sold out,
yeah. What do you do if it's sold out?
I would just resort to the Pet Med because I don't know any of the other brands, and I know the Pet Meds work. Joe Tippins, in his Facebook group, if anyone's participating in that, sometimes I check in, but he's really adamant that you should only buy the pet medicine. He doesn't advocate the Happy Healing Store, and I don't really know why. He's also doesn't advocate Ivermectin, and I don't know why. I think he does what he knows.
Like, this is what I did. Don't deviate. Yeah. I can only comment on my specific process, probably.
Yeah.
Have you heard of anyone doing it kind of adjuvant to chemo? This is from Nikki Potts. Have you heard of anyone doing the protocol along with chemotherapy? And I'm afraid to let my oncologist know and get fired.
Me too.
Yeah, I understand the fear of the oncologist having a reaction to it. It doesn't mean he has to know you're actually doing it. You could at least ask him what he thinks. You might get a good response. But in regards to have I seen other people doing it alongside? Yes. In the Facebook groups and even on the message boards, people talk about doing it alongside other treatments. And again, it really all comes down to, can your body handle it? And I think for the most part, people can. But there are people that have compromised livers, probably from various issues with cancer, even related. I know there's a lady I've talked to now for about 6 months. She's a friend of my college friend who has some kind of cancer, and she's into her 4th round of chemo, and she's not doing well, but her liver is really compromised, and she's afraid to take it, and her doctor told her not to, so she's listening to him. I've seen her liver panels, and they're in the high red zone. So there probably is a reason to avoid it. I really don't know. But then again, it comes down to they're feeding chemo to her. So what is that doing to her liver?
I know, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, they're killing everything. So is it really? Yeah, that's what's so hard. Was somebody the other day called chemo barbaric, and I was like, my gosh, that's such a good way to describe it. That's how it feels, and it's like, that's really what it does, So I like that. It's like, well, what's the actual thing that's hurting the liver? And is this actually going to make it worse? Or is it just because chemo in general?
Yeah. Chemo's like carpet bombing your entire body. It's I think of World War II carpet bombing. It seems about that advanced because it is not selective. And ironically, Fenbendazole really isn't much different, except that it's gentle enough that normal cells can deal with it.
Right. Alexandra said, any suggestions on getting traditional oncologists on board? I think one of the things, I'll partially answer this. In Roger's book, there are 59, the oncologist will typically resort to there are no studies, and there actually are studies. I don't think maybe you could speak to if you think any of those studies will be sufficient for an oncologist to really approve of it. I think at the moment, you're probably still somewhat in the don't ask, don't tell zone with most oncologists.
Well, I am hearing there are a lot of doctors that are more open to it, but you never know till you ask. I didn't tell mine because that's what I'd heard the horror stories and I just did my own thing. But nowadays, it wouldn't surprise me if he's heard of it. That doesn't mean he's going to just say, yeah, sure, give it a shot. You never know until you ask. I mean, you could always say, what do you think? And then if he says, don't do it, then you at least know how he feels about it. That doesn't mean you can't do your own thing, but you have to weigh that.
And so for the Fenben, the dosage, I know we kind of talked about this and the ivermectin dosage. The dosage is basically at 222 in the morning, 222 in the evening, somewhere in that range as a starting point.
That is double the Joe Tippins protocol. Mm-hmm. But when we were talking before, I come to realize that it's really well tolerated in the body. It doesn't really have side effects. So if your liver can handle it and you're dealing with tumors, why wouldn't you go more? There's no real science behind it about dosing.
It's art more than science, and it's a risk reward. It's a risk reward tolerance question, but it seems to be that the toxicity of it is minimal enough that double dosage can be worth the risk, especially if you're later stage as well. It's probably like, why not?
I thought this question might come up, so I pulled up Dr. William Mackis's he recently put something out about dosage. So let me just grab that really quick and tell you his thoughts, because he has a strategy. I had it and I lost it, and now I don't know how to find it, but I'll tell you what I was looking at. So he has a strategy for what he calls low, intermediate, medium, high, and aggressive. Okay. And each one of those strategies has a different dosage recommendation for both ivermectin and fenbendazole. And so they don't translate directly to Joe Tippins, but the point here is that depending on what you're dealing with, depending on your personal health, this is a doctor who's promoting these compounds, and I don't know if he's prescribing them or what he does. He's on Facebook, he's on Instagram. You can find him. He's William Mackis, Makis. And he's recommending different dosages for different scenarios. It's not a one size fits all, which in my opinion is another limitation of Joe Tippins. I mean, bless his heart, he saved me, but he's not opening his mind to developing, and he's just saying, this is what works, and this is all I'm promoting. Eventually people need to figure out that there's better ways of doing that, and Mackis is one of them.
Well, yeah, I was trying to, and he also has this ivermectin dosage, and this is from William Mackis, and this is on the Cancer Crew blog. So if you go cancercrew.beehive.com, he says for ivermectin, the low dose is 0.5 milligrams of ivermectin per kilogram. A kilogram is basically 2.2 pounds. So if you just take your weight and divide it by 2.2 and then take that number by 0.5, then that gets you close. So if I'm not going to pretend to do that math in my head.
I was like,
the engineer guy. For a medium dose is 1 milligram per kilogram. High dose is 2 milligrams per kilogram. A very high dose is 5 milligrams per kilogram. And on the very high dose, the possible side effects are short-term transient visual effects. On those lower dosage, the 0.5 milligrams, the 1 milligram, and the 2 milligrams, he says that there are no long-term side effects. He's an oncologist in Canada. He's a little bit controversial, as most of these people are that are kind of promoting this alternate healing path, but that is his recommended ivermectin dosage. Side effects of the fenbendazole, I think we kind of discussed that a little bit.
For my dosage, just to add, before I talked to Roger, somebody had given me fenbendazole. They gave me 444 tablets. So I was just doing one 444 tablet. And then when I talked to Roger, I added in the supplements and the fat. And then when that bottle ran out, I am now doing FenbenBio 222 in the morning, 222 at night with the supplements and the fat. And then I just take ivermectin one time in the morning with that. So that's my current protocol.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because that reminds me that's worth talking about. So the reason to split up the Fenben and not the ivermectin has to do with how once these compounds get into your bloodstream, they have a half-life because your body metabolizes them slowly during the day. And fenbendazole has a much shorter half-life than ivermectin. So splitting it up into 2 doses is better than taking it all at once, because that means as the day goes on, by the time you go to bed the next morning, it's pretty much gone. But if you split it up, and by the time you take your second dose, it might be waning, but then you get more going again, and it's always there. Like we're trying to do, we're trying to keep it around when your cells are dividing. And ivermectin, because it has a longer half-life, you don't need to do that as well. I mean, you can, it's even better if you do, but it's not as critical to split that one up as it is with fenbendazole.
I just put in the chat the link to Carly's protocol that I did in January, and that has a link to Dr. Makis's ivermectin dosage chart.
But I think I was doing on and off when we wrote that, and now I'm doing 7 days a week because I'm tolerating it really well, right? So we probably need to update that one. Writing a new one.
And then Jessica asked about the horse pace for the ivermectin, and I've actually done the math on this, which is basically whatever milligrams you're trying to get to. So if Carly needed to get to 25 milligrams a day based on 1 milligram per kilogram, so 25 milligrams on the horse pace essentially equates to 1 milligram. You times it by 10, and that's how much you would weigh as a horse to get to the ivermectin number.
Wait.
So Carly takes about 250 pounds relative of the horse pace. Like I said, it's more art than science, unfortunately. But science is boring when you get into it, and art's much more fun. And so
we're all mavericks up in here, you know?
And so it's basically, it comes down to, like, Carly weighs roughly 100 pounds. So she takes roughly 200 pounds of horse paste, and that's on a lower dose. That's on 0.5 milligrams per kilogram. I'm actually going to do a guide on this, and I'm going to turn it, and
Roger's going to do a guide on this.
I'm going to show you. Roger's actually writing the book on ivermectin. The next book is on ivermectin. I'm going to force him to do it, so I don't have to do any of the research.
Also, I'm 110 pounds. Thank you so much.
I know. I didn't want to say, well, she weighs roughly 150 pounds. And
he's like, we weigh her every day.
This is a good question, which is, what is the difference between fenbendazole and menbendazole? Are they totally different, or are they in the same kind of family of things? Do you have any knowledge on that?
Yeah, they're almost identical. There's a slight variation in the molecule. And I think the change has more to do with how well it's tolerated by humans, but it's really minor. And the change also actually favors fenbendazole when it comes to getting everywhere it needs to go, at least from what I've seen. But the differences are so small that if you have a doctor wanting to give you mebendazole, then they're probably fine taking it. It's not going to be a significant difference, at least from what I can see.
This episode is brought to you by cancercrew.com. Cancer Crew is a private community that Carly and I have been building to give a place for cancer patients and their caretakers to have honest and open conversations with other people that are facing the same diagnosis, and the protocols and the path that they've chosen to deviate from the standard of care in order to find their own healing journey. So if you or someone that you know or love is facing a diagnosis, go to cancercrew.com and join the wait list, and we will be opening it soon.
See you there.
And thoughts on Fenben and ivermectin long term? Do you think our bodies will get used to it? And we had this question that we were kind of talking about so there was a guy, I'll tee it up for the audience. There was a guy who I've actually spoken to, and I may have him come on to Cancer Crew in the next couple weeks. His father had stage 4 lung cancer. His mother actually died from lung cancer in 2014. They went to Japan as kind of this, you're going to die soon, so let's knock out the bucket list. The son, who I had spoken to, heard about fenbendazole, got his dad to start taking it. His dad takes it and goes from stage 4 lung cancer to no evidence of disease in relatively short order after oncology told him that there was nothing that they could do for him. So he does this post that goes kind of viral on how fenbendazole helps his dad heal stage 4 lung cancer. And then a relatively prominent guy in the world of cancer healing had a comment that basically said, well, fenbendazole can block glucose uptake, so you can kind of cheat a PET scan by taking fenbendazole because the cancer cells may be there, but they're not taking the glucose like they would typically in a PET scan. And there are stories of people that get on fenbendazole and then the cancer adjusts to the fenbendazole and then comes roaring back in a very aggressive way. Obviously, anecdotally, you are a perfect counterexample to that not happening.
Who are those people? Do we know them?
Maybe speak to those things and then how that fits within the frame of kind of like the fear similar to antibiotics. If you're always taking Z-Paks, then you're going to get a more and more resistant version of the thing that comes back. And, you get diminishing returns as time goes on. Do you think that's...
Yeah, I can talk about that a little. Because there were some studies that I found that talked about that in particular. But again, these studies are only skimming the surface. So take it for what it's worth. In other words, they look at a little snapshot in a laboratory about some little aspect of cancer that they're trying to demonstrate. And they do their thing, write their paper, and that's it. But everyone that I saw that commented on this aspect suggested that fenbendazole is not something cancer cells can overcome like they can other drugs. However, from a broader general cancer biology standpoint, as cancer becomes more advanced and more sophisticated, it develops tricky mechanisms to deal with medicines, including what they call efflux pumps, where it recognizes something that has been brought in somehow through the cellular membrane and it kicks it out. Now, these doctors are saying they haven't seen that possibility with fenbendazole, but because we're only skimming the surface, we don't really know. Now, if I was to speculate, and again, this goes to the conversation we had earlier with my college friend, if you kill the cancer before it can evolve that far down the road, you're probably going to be better off than coming back in later after it's more advanced and trying to kill it after it's been evolving from other medicines that don't kill it, like chemo or whatever you're doing. Or sometimes they just naturally get more sophisticated. So if you get rid of it before it ever gets to that stage, I think you're a lot better off than if you try to take it out when you're on your deathbed. But that's just me talking, shooting from the hip. And all I can say is I did see some commentary in the studies that I looked at that talk about they don't think that cancer has the ability to overcome fenbendazole the way that it does other medicines. And again, take it with a grain of salt. It's very superficial at this stage. I'll give you an example of why I mean superficial. A friend of mine developed a product called Nuemi, and it's a skincare product. And he took me through his shop few months ago and was kind of just showing me around. But he told me that the product they promote is glutathione, which is a supplement you can all buy, and it's a good antioxidant. It's good for you. But he said that glutathione is the most researched compound in history. He says there are over 150,000 PubMed studies on various aspects of glutathione. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, I thought I was doing good finding 50 or 60 on fenbendazole and ivermectin. And now there's 150,000 on this compound no one's even doing anything with. Right. So in context, I don't really know what that means. It's nice to know that there's some research supporting these mechanisms, but I think we're a long way from having it fully understood.
The question on binders. My dad's on antibiotics due to an infection, taking Fenben and ivermectin. I'm worried the binder will affect antibiotics. Do you use binders in any way?
Binders are more for when you feel off and you're trying to detox. And yeah, they could come in handy if you have, like if you're treating cancer and you have all this weird cell death kind of clean out you need to do. Binders can help in that capacity. But you do run the risk of interfering with the mechanisms and absorption of fenbendazole and ivermectin. So if you're going to do them on different intervals. And by themselves, they don't really participate in these mechanisms with fenbendazole and ivermectin. So keep them separate. Again, if people are telling you need to take binders in order to have it work, they don't know what they're talking about. The binders don't affect these mechanisms. They can help with detoxing and stuff, but that's not directly related to the efficacy of these things.
Yeah, the additive is fat. And actually I think somebody saw in a comment, like what type of fat? I know we talked to someone, Chris too, who had multiple myeloma. He just wraps his in butter, in a chunk of butter, and just swallows it because he's an animal.
Well, now I'm doing half a shot glass
full
of
olive
oil because of our conversation like last week.
So you want to speak to the olive oil potentially?
Thanks.
Yeah. I think the olive oil is the right choice. I mean, butter works. It's fat, clearly, but olive oil has other benefits. It's full of what they call phenols, which are great antioxidant, anti-inflammatory compounds, in addition to the fat that's in there that helps the fenbendazole ride along into your bloodstream. So if you just did olive oil because you're a health nut, you're doing yourself a favor. Take it with your fenbendazole and you're making it absorb easier. So that's the win. Olive oil for the win. And get a quality olive oil. Don't just get the cheap stuff. Get the stuff that comes in a bottle that's either completely opaque but not clear. And spend a little more. It's good. It's worth the extra money. And it tastes better than the cheap stuff. So
I always get mine from Italy. I'm like, if they make it in Italy, it's probably good.
There you go.
We'll put that on the Roger Recommends page.
Roger recommends. Yeah, what brand do you get? Do you know?
I have tried several. I don't know the name. It came in, it was like a Turkish name in this bottle with a cork in it. And then the next one I got was in a fancy can with an easier top to open. I just look for the ones that are more expensive. Again, that's how I don't really know what I'm talking about. I just know you get what you pay for. You can kind of tell if the label's fancy. It's not the stuff you buy at Smith's.
Yeah.
And so we're getting close to wrapping up. So if you have any other kind of questions, drop them here now, and we'll answer them. And since we have everyone here, I'm gonna try to pressure Roger with his guilty conscience into giving us the Appendix 12 in his book. You can't see any of it right now, but this basically goes through cancer type, the potential responsiveness of a specific cancer type to fenbendazole. He also has a very helpful graphic that kind of outlines theoretically how fenbendazole and ivermectin work in tandem to, I think of it, the picture that I've made in my head as I've watched this is kind of like the cancer starts building inroads to, nutrient inroads to itself, and kind of all roads lead to Rome. And so ivermectin and fenbendazole kind of start cutting off those inroads. So the cancer cell as a city itself doesn't have the same nutrients that it once did. Don't disabuse me of my fantasy if that is an improper metaphor. Is that a close? Are we close enough? Yeah, good enough for government work, man. What are we talking about? And we're going to work together on doing something like this, releasing a version of this for the cancer crew. So that way, I know the questions that we get very often are, I have this specific cancer type, this stage, will fenbendazole work? And Appendix 12, if you have the book, it's definitely worth finding fenbendazole, if nothing else for Roger's beautiful prose and ancillary to that, Appendix 12, and his beautiful artwork on how the science of a cell works.
Also, the Audible just came out yesterday, didn't it?
It's been out for about a week.
Oh, it's been out for about a week. And so if you get the Audible version, something that is good for me, since I'm like always moving, I get the Audible version and the book, and then I feel like I can read it faster. And then I can go and look at the graphics and everything.
And I think this actually goes to the question of how do you convince your oncologist? I think the only way that you can really convince, to the extent that you feel the need to convince your medical team of anything outside of just doing it outside of their approval, when you kind of bone up on the research and more about the source material than they do, which when you laser focus on a given topic like fenbendazole, you listening to Roger's book for 30 minutes, you will know more than your oncologist will know in 3 lifetimes about the inner workings of fenbendazole. And so just arming yourself with knowledge so that way they can't move you off of the thing that you feel called to do and pursue.
And my oncologist even didn't know about like glucose monitoring, and I'm like, you don't know about glucose monitoring? I'm like, this is amazing, and just because I love it and I focused on it, but it's like they know standard of care oncology. I love when Raleigh says they know how to not get sued. That's what they're focusing on. That's just the nature of the system, and so they can't, they're not. Most of them aren't going to go do the research on that.
No.
Like
they got lives to live, and that's not a knock on them. Roger, any last words of wisdom as we wrap up here?
I don't think so. I think we
You
covered
said everything. You said more than you would have liked to say.
No, I enjoy doing this. I'm happy to help. And I guess I would invite people on Cancer Crew, if they want to shoot me questions, I'm happy to dig into it with my framework and try to get them some more answers. I know we've kind of skimmed the surface on all this stuff today, and there's a lot of rabbit holes we can go down, but I'm happy to just look at anything. Anyone has specific questions about what they're dealing with, I'm happy to go into that.
You've always been very giving of your time, and part of we're going to try to convince Roger. I'm really trying to get him to commit to a lot of things. We're going to try to get him to do kind of a standing monthly fenbendazole corner, potentially ivermectin as he gets more into the research, as he finishes this book that he's very close to finishing on ivermectin. And have a standing, because this was kind of like give us the lay of the land from 30,000 feet. And I think, like I said, maybe on the next one, which maybe we'll do in July sometime or late June, to the extent that we have more specific questions that people submit beforehand, maybe we can get into the inner workings and run it through the framework and kind of have some potential answers for people. So what we'll do is we'll have this recording, we'll get it edited. We'll put this within Cancer Crew in the next day or two so that people can refer back to it. There's also, if you go into the Standard of Cure series within the Cancer Crew, you can see our podcast interview with Roger. This is more in-depth, more cancer specific than that episode. And then, Roger is one of our resident experts in Cancer Crew. So feel free to message him. And he's, like I said, he's always been very kind to give the gift that he found through cancer and to help other people in their healing journey, which we are immensely appreciative of.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything.
And so we'll wrap it up here, and we'll see y'all on the next one. For those in Cancer Crew, so next week, if you look at the events that are happening, we're going to be interviewing Crispy Cancer. We will also be interviewing a lady who healed her stage 4 breast cancer, and she had an experience, and she went to Hope for Cancer in Mexico, and so she's done high dose vitamin C, coffee enemas, if that's your cup of tea.
I would totally do that. I need to order some.
I won't make the joke. I won't go for it. I digress. If I could see everyone's faces, I would make the joke, but I don't know. Mixed company. And so those are the 2 next week, and then we have a couple more events happening. We are again, we're always here to help. We hope you enjoyed this, and Roger and I are going to get working on getting this Appendix 12 happening, and Roger recommends corner. So those are all the things we're going to be doing.
Sounds fun.
They're obviously friends. This banter. All right, you guys, we'll see you on the next one. And thanks again, Roger. You're the best.
Thanks, Roger. We'll talk soon, bro.
Bye, guys. See you later.
Peace.